Hello and welcome to another episode of our Android Div Calculator tutorial. In the last episode we started creating or adding functionality to these buttons here that add orders for one diner. But as you can see, no matter which one we click, it always adds the new row here. And the worst part is when we click the add diner button, which we already had created, it doesn't add it to the end anymore. It adds it simply to the end of all the diners with only one line in them, instead of adding it to the end of the whole thing. So why is that happening? Well, our current algorithm, which is simply added to diner list.size plus 1, assumes that we only have one order per diner. So when we click this, it's not going to add it to the end of this, it's just going to add it right here under this customer. So we need a new algorithm both for this button as well as all of these buttons. So, and if we look down here, I'm sure it's messing with our add algorithm down here too. We have to change the algorithm for all of these. So let's start with the first one, row 1, and we'll add it in a different way. And we just need a way to account for all of the diners as well as all the orders for each of the diners, so that we can get a number that will bring it down here when we click the new button. So let's create a number, an integer, and we'll call it row index, and we'll add main or row 1 to main table at row index. That's the number that we'll use. And what number do we want row index to be? Well, let's create a for loop, and we can just copy this code here. We're going to create it so that it is the same as the previous for loops we've created. We're going to iterate once for each diner in diner list. And what are we going to do for each diner? We're going to do this. In other words, so plus equals, what does that mean? This right here is functionally equivalent to these two are the same thing. These two lines right here, they say the exact same thing. Plus equals is a shortcut or a shorthand for reassigning a variable to that same variable plus something else. So plus equals just basically adds to a variable and sets that variable equal to this new bigger number. And you can do the same thing with minus equals. One other thing that you might want to know, let's say you have a variable called x and you plus equal 1. This is the same thing as x plus plus. Plus plus adds or increments the variable by 1, and plus equals increments the variable by whatever number is after that. So these two mean the same thing, and they also mean the same thing again as x equals x plus 1. So these are 3 ways to increment. This is a shortcut for this, and this is a shortcut for this when the number is 1. And it's pretty common, and most programming languages have all 3 of these versions. But anyway, so what we're doing here with row index is we're increasing it by dinerlist.getI. So for each iteration we take the diner list and we get that diner list, and we get its order list, and we return the size of that order list. So we're increasing row index by the number of orders that each diner has. So let's run that and see whether or not it works properly. Alright, let's create 3 customers. And we'll start adding some orders. Again, we haven't changed the algorithm for the orders, so they're still incorrect. But if we click this button now, it should be the last row here. And it is. So why is it working this time? Well, now we're passing row index as the argument to add view. And where are we adding it to? Where we count. So right, we just clicked this add button for each customer once. Now, every customer has 2 or has 3 orders each, even though it looks like this last customer has all of them. In reality, each customer has 3 orders each, and they're just placed in the wrong order. So this for loop iterates such that for the first customer, it counts how many orders it has 3. The second customer, it also has 3, and the third customer has 3. So it does row index, which starts at 1, and then it adds 3 to it, it goes again. The next customer also has 3, it adds 3 to it again, and it loops again, and the last customer also has 3, so it's 1 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 10. So add the customer to row number 10, and it'll add it to the correct location. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and fix this the bottom step down here, because that's currently wrong. So we already have this row index, and that accounts for every single row up till the last row here. In order to get the correct row down here, all we have to do is have row index, and we add 11. Why 11? Because aside from, so we already, row index already accounts for everything up here. Below everything up there, we have 11 static rows. That's like this line here, this tip line, this other tip line, this text line. If you add that together, we should have about 11 static lines. And we also increase it by dinerlist.size. Why? Because we want it to be at the end of the split bill portion of the app. To get that, we simply add, because each row down here, there's 1 row for each customer, so we simply add row index by the size of dinerlist, and we'll get the right number. So again, we have, to get the right row down there, we add all these rows here, which is already row index. We add all the stack rows here, and then we add the dynamic rows down here, which is based on how many diners there are, which is the same thing as dinerlist.size. And that's why we get row index plus 11 plus dinerlist.size for row 2 here. So let's test again. And now the split bill portion of our app should work correctly. So if we scroll down here, it should look pretty normal. And look at that, it does look normal. That's good. Okay, the only thing we need to fix now is this one right here, where we add row 3. We need to change the algorithm for that too. So same basic idea. Let's go ahead and create a new integer for this called row index 2 equals start it at 1 as well, and we'll do another for loop. We can't use I in this case. I'll show you why. We have to use int j here instead of I, simply because we already used I up here in this part, so, or right up here. So you can't use I again, you have to use a different variable. You'll notice that we use I here, but also I here. The reason we can get away with that is because this is in the if block, and this is in the else block. The if block and the else block will never run, or they'll never both run in the same iteration of a loop. So we're allowed to get away with that. But here it's in the same block, it's the same else block, so we have to use a different variable. So let's use j, and let's go ahead and look at this. How do we get, when we click, let's say, whoopsies, when we click this button here, how do we get it to add to this row right underneath it? Well, if we count, we'll know that we need 1 row for this customer, 1 row for this customer, a bunch of rows for this customer, and then 1 row for this customer, and then the row after that is the correct row. So that number is equal to customer 1. So 1 times the number of rows customer 1 has, 1 times the number of rows customer 2 has, 1 times the number of rows customer 3 has, plus 1 times the number of rows this customer has. The sum of all of that, that'll be the row number that we can use. So let's iterate let's iterate with j, which is equal to 0, and let's iterate until j is less than or equal to I. And remember what I is. Up here we have a for loop already, so this is a for loop inside of another for loop. This for loop has an if block, and the stuff inside this if block only runs when dynalist.getI.IVAddOrder is equal to v. In other words, this block only runs when I, right here, represents the position of a diner in diner list that the user clicked IVAddOrder for. So if the user clicks this button, this for loop will run such that, and then it'll reach a particular I where I is equal to the position of this particular customer. And only when that happens does this code in here run. So we know I is going to be equal to the position of diner list, or of a diner in diner list that the user clicked the button for. So that means we're gonna start with the first customer and go all the way down up to it and including the customer that was clicked, and we're gonna add the order list for all of them. So we're gonna use row index 2 plus equals dynalist.get j dot order list dot size. So we're gonna add. So for the first customer here, we're gonna add the order list, which is just 1, and then we're gonna add this for the second customer again, just 1. The third customer has like 9 or something, we'll add 9. The fourth customer has 1, we'll add another 1, and then finally that's it. We'll have the correct row index number, and that should be the correct number for where we should add row 3. So let's see if that works. Okay, let's go ahead and add some customers. And just to make sure this is correct, we'll call this Bob, Mike, and Tim. Okay, let's add some orders to Bob. We'll give him 2. And you notice it is creating a row just underneath the last row of Bob. Mike does the same thing. Tim does the same thing. That's awesome. That's exactly what we want. If we go down here, it looks exactly how it should look. If we create new ones, it'll create them in the right spot, both up there as well as down here. So that's great. That's doing what we needed to do. And if you get stuck and you're having a little bit of trouble dealing with the nested for loops, nested for loop means a for loop inside of another for loop. Or if you're having trouble understanding how row index 2 is calculated, you can go to my website, go to tutorials, go to the diff calculator one, and then find the part where we're at currently, and there's an infographic that might be useful. Or you can just pause the video right here. So here it is. Sorry, I just hit refresh. It's going to take a while to get back there. There we go. Okay, so here it is. Pretend that we clicked this add button here. And that means we want the order or the new row to go under here. So what does that mean? So because of the outer for loop, this for loop here, we know that this code only runs when I is equal to the position of this third customer. In other words, when I is equal to 2. So when I is equal to 2, we start a new loop. And we start with j equals 0, and we keep going until j is not less than or equal to I. In other words, when j is equal to 3, that's when we stop the loop. That means we run the loop 3 times. We run it once for j equals 0, another time for j equals 1, another time for j equals 2. And not for j equals 3, because that would mean it's higher than I. Now for each loop, what we do is we increase row index 2 by the size of the order list for diner number j. So diner j. So for the first loop, we check for diner 0, which is the first customer. The second one, we check for diner 1, which is the second customer, and then for the third iteration, we increase row index by the size of the order list of diner number 2, which is the third diner. And that way we get a number that, or in this case we get the number 9, which is 1 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3, and that will give the correct row to add it to. So, if you need to, pause this video, think this over, read this, look back at the code, and hopefully it'll all click. And if not, maybe take a break from these videos, come back to it in a day or two, and think about it again. It can be kind of hard to get your head around when you're new to programming, which I assume you are. But anyway, when you're done, what you can do is, I think I'm going to make a checkpoint here. It's not on the website yet, but if you want, I'm going to update my website in just a few minutes where I have all the code here, just copy and paste it onto my website, and you can just check your code with what I have and see that we're all on the same page. Alternatively, you can just pause the video a bunch of times and make sure that everything is the same. The benefit of copying it from my website is you can just copy and paste. And again, once you copy and paste code, you can just go to, what is it? Project, or no, source, and then format, and it'll automatically format the code so it looks nice like this. Or you just hit Control-Shift-F. Mine is already formatted, so nothing happens. But yeah, if you need to, go check out my website for the checkpoint to see whether or not your code matches up. Otherwise, you can move on to the next video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So, bye.